Former Johannesburg Stock Exchange employee Ntuthuko Shoba has been found guilty of masterminding the hit on his girlfriend Tshegofatso Pule. The High Court in Johannesburg made the ruling earlier, and the court found that Shoba orchestrated Pule's murder, which was carried out by self-confessed murderer Muzikaise Malebane. Pule was 8 months pregnant when her body was found shot and hanging from a tree in Roodepoort in 2020.
Despite seeking to create the impression of a concerned and expectant father, Mr. Shoba does not appear to have been worried that Miss Pule was getting into a car late at night with a man who she had herself pointed out was drunk. Mr. Shoba accepted that the Jeep did not look like an Uber and probably wasn't an Uber. He says he was not concerned because Miss Pule appeared to know Mr. Malapane, but that is plainly insufficient. I am driven to conclude that had he genuinely not known who was driving the car, Mr. Shoba would have shown at least some interest in the identity of the man who had arrived, drunk, to pick up the mother of his unborn child. The only reasonable explanation for Mr. Shoba's apparent lack of interest is that he knew exactly who had come and what was going to happen to Miss Pule when she drove off with him. He had in fact arranged with Mr. Malapane to collect and then kill Miss Pule. Miss Pule did not say that her ride was waiting outside. Mr. Shoba told her that he, as was normal, had arranged a lift for her. They went outside to find that there was no one waiting. Mr. Shoba then called Mr. Malapane from his 081 number to hurry him up. Mr. Malapane arrived a short time later. Accordingly, I reject Mr. Shoba's version of what happened when Miss Pule left the Westlake complex on the 4th of June 2020. It is not reasonably possibly true.
Now, I did mention that we had Slindelo Masikane and Manqoba Mchunu following those proceedings that took place today. And of course, a very bittersweet moment, Sli, I'll start with you, for the family having been found guilty, but it won't bring their daughter back. And I remember you were speaking to one of the family members who said they'll never be able to visit her. The only thing they can visit is her grave.
Certainly so. I mean, quite an extensive judgment. Acting Judge Stuart Wilson taking about an hour to deliver it, going through the evidence that was brought before the trial, and then bringing in reasons as to why he believes believes with beyond a reasonable doubt, that is, that Ntuthuko Shoba certainly orchestrated and masterminded the murder of his 8-month pregnant girlfriend, saying that it really comes down to the evidence that was before him. The state went as far as getting cell phone records, getting witnesses to corroborate a lot of what the convicted killer Muzikaise Malebane had to say. And so we spoke to the NPA about the judgment. Obviously, it's a win for them. It's a victory for cases such as this. Gender-based violence is an epidemic in this country, and this was not an easy case for them to prove. But I think the NPA is quite satisfied and happy with what the investigations team was able to do, and also what the prosecution had brought before the court. Let's take a listen.
This was served. We need to applaud, obviously, the work done by Captain Mbete, working closely with Advocate Fakhri Mohammed in ensuring a successful prosecution. Also, we need to applaud the strategy that they used in securing this conviction, because we remember that we first had Malapane, who pleaded guilty and was sentenced, and thereafter he had to turn state witness after he had implicated Shoba as the mastermind behind this murder. So we are hoping as the NPA that the court will dispense a sentence that sends a clear message that there is no place in society for those who perpetrate gender-based violence. And therefore we will be arguing for life imprisonment as the NPA, as Shoba was found guilty of premeditated murder.
So I just want to stay with you for a minute more so that you could explain to us. You said that it was a lengthy judgment that the judge gave today. So what did you pick up as some of the salient findings or the reasoning that he used to make the verdict that he did today?
So what the judge was really, what he really clarified was that because the state was relying quite a bit on the version of the convicted killer, if the state was solely relying on this evidence, I don't think we would have gotten the verdict that we got today. What the state did was go a step further and corroborate Muzgaisa's version. So from him telling the court that, listen, I was approached by Ntuthuko Shoba to kill Tshegofatso Pule. I didn't even know this lady. In fact, Shoba was the one to give me her number. He also spoke about the initial plan to have Tsego killed after a meeting at a restaurant in the south of Johannesburg. That was corroborated by one of Tsego's friends who said, I actually saw the SMS asking Tsego to go to this restaurant for a meeting, but Tshegofatso never went because her friend said, no, there's something suspicious about this. So that was just one example of the judge saying, look, there are people that are corroborating what the state is bringing before us. CCTV footage as well, corroborating a lot of what the state was presenting before the court. But we also had an opportunity to speak to Tshegofatso Pule's family. Let's take a listen to what the uncle had to say.
All of us were emotional and are still are. It's nothing to do with whether Shoba has been found guilty, but it's the experience as a family that we went through. We can take it from the moment Tshegofatso was discovered hanging on a tree to today's moment. And even after Mr. Malipane was convicted and sentenced to 20 years, we still had our suspicion that Ntuthuko Shoba had something to do with the murder and the killing of Tshegofatso. Today, those suspicions were confirmed as a fact.
And just before we move on to Manqobasli, what was his demeanor in court today? What were you sensing from him when that verdict was made?
I mean, we were all anticipating the judgment today. I mean, this was him essentially learning his fate in terms of whether he's going to be in prison, possibly for the rest of his life. And I must say, throughout the trial, which was something the judge also picked up, was that he didn't really show much emotion, especially when he was in the witness box speaking about those last moments that he was with Tsego, with the judge mentioning that there was a point where Tshegofatso noticed that the Uber driver, who was the killer, was smelling of alcohol and actually looked drunk. And when Shoba mentioned this to the court, he had absolutely, it didn't seem like he cared at all that he was allowing his pregnant girlfriend to be driven by somebody who seemingly was drunk. And so, you know, his demeanor today, I think, was quite interesting watching him as that judgment was read out. I think at some point he thought he might, you know, get away with this. However, when that guilty verdict came in, you could see him looking very emotional, the most emotional I've seen him actually throughout this whole trial.
No, absolutely, Manqoba. You were outside the court when the verdict was read. You were surrounded by supporters, friends, family. A lot of them cried. You know, they were very emotional after that announcement was made. And you got to engage with them. You know, talk us through those emotions that they were going through.
Indeed. In fact, we did see scenes of jubilation as well as emotional scenes outside court. I think the emotions more from Tshegofatso Pule's families and relatives who were not only relieved that Ntuthuko Shoba was found guilty of murder, but also there was a sense of celebration, a sense of joy, and a sense that the family is a step closer to finding closure and justice in this particular matter. And earlier on, the day for the family really started with a prayer. They met at Meadowlands in Soweto. That's the homestead where Tshegofatso Pule had grown up. They had a prayer session there, of course praying for closure in this particular matter, hoping that the court is going to find Shoba guilty of murder. And as we went to court, we heard similar echoes from the people that were outside court. There were gender-based violence activists outside court. There were also political parties all singing the same tune, singing songs to the tune that they wanted Ntuthuko Shoba to be found guilty. They want an end to gender-based violence, and really they want, a verdict from the court that will act as a deterrent or serve as a deterrent to other perpetrators to stop this sort of crime. But take a listen, Rofua, to what some of the people had to say after that verdict was given. It was quite an emotional scene there, and there was a lot of singing and jubilation, ululation from some of the people who were outside there. Take a listen to what they had to say.
matter how long this bastard goes away. The fact of the matter is we have lost not only a daughter, but children. We are grandmothers without a grandchild, grandmothers without grandchildren, and that matters a lot. But guys, we thank you. We thank you from the bottom of our hearts for everything that you have done for us from day one up to maybe the last day when we get sentenced.
Justice has been served. Smele is sentencing Pella. I'm so happy. As a country, we are going somewhere. This shows for we are going somewhere. I'm happy. I'm delighted. I'm happy for family, man. As I said, I'm happy for the women of this country. Finally, it's a way of showing them there's hope for them in cases like this.
I feel excited because of the bastard is inside now. The law has taken its course. I'm happy after 2 years that we've been running left and right. I'm so happy. There's nothing that I can say. I'm happy for women. I'm happy for the justice. It shows that the justice we can rely on it at the moment. Come 10 May, we say double life sentences.
You know, if I was a judge, I was going to give Shoba 8 years to give lessons out there. But unfortunately, no parole. Unfortunately, I'm not a judge. But we'll take what will come from the mouth of the judge.
Very emotional scenes there coming from family members, relatives and other supporters of this particular case, Manqoba. But you also got to speak to a foundation that was established in her name. What did they have to say about today's proceedings?
Well, they were also quite, relieved at the verdict that was given by the High Court. Of course, for this foundation, they say now the work begins for them to ensure that Tshegofatso Pule's legacy is kept alive. Of course, they are busy at this moment supporting gender-based violence victims. They are also fighting in courts for those perpetrators to face the full march of the law. So for them, they say this actually should show that Tshegofatso Pule's death was not in vain and that the issue of gender-based violence is a big issue in the country which must be dealt with. They are calling, of course, for the harshest punishment, a double life sentence for Ntuthuko Shoba for the murders of Tshegofatso Pule and her unborn baby. But for the foundation, I think really for now, it's about keeping that legacy going. Let's take a listen to what they had to say in regards to this earlier on.
It's been such an emotional roller coaster. Today, for the very first time, there were tears both of joy and relief, as well as a bit of sadness, But the biggest thing of all of this is that we finally claimed victory, NPA came through for us, SAPS came through for us, everybody that was involved in this case definitely came through for us. And, as much as this was birthed, the foundation was birthed through Tshegofatso's demise. However, we've decided that this is going to be a legacy, and we're going to make sure that whenever anybody remembers Tshegofatso's name, they remember the good deeds that we will be doing in her name. So it's a victory. I'm sure that right now, when you go back home, everybody's going to be in an absolute state of euphoria. So we're very happy, and it's a huge relief. We're just hoping that when we come back on the 10th, the sentence that will be given will be the one that indeed, matches what he has done to us.
Slindelo Masikane, Manqoba Mchunu, thank you very much for your time this afternoon. Very, very sad, and you were saying off-air, taxing court proceedings that you've been following. I suppose we'll catch up with you both at the sentencing. Thank you very much. That is Slindelo Masikane and Manqoba Mchunu following the Tshegofatso Pule trial that took place there.